Far away in the black sea of stars, a research ship named the Luma floated in silence. Its metal skin shimmered like a silver moon, and inside, a group of alien scientists worked quietly. They were explorers of knowledge, traveling across galaxies to find lost worlds and forgotten voices. On this quiet day, the scanners picked up something strange, a pulse, hidden deep in the storms of a dead planet below them. The planet had no name, no life, only dust and broken rocks. Yet the pulse kept repeating and soft. Rhythmic, almost like a heartbeat, another magnetic echo? Asked Captain Renard, his voice low and calm. Not this time, replied Lyra, the lead linguist, her eyes fixed on the glowing screen. It's structured, sir, like sound waves forming a pattern. Renard frowned, his tail moving slowly behind him. Put it through the filters, he ordered. The ship's AI began decoding the strange signal. Symbols appeared on the screen, unknown, ancient, and impossible to read. The system tried every code in their database, every tongue ever recorded by the Galactic Union. Still, the result was the same, untranslatable. Lyra crossed her arms, frustrated. It's not any known alien dialect. Not even pre-expansion era, she muttered. Renard leaned closer. Then what is it? Before anyone could answer, the signal played again, this time louder. It echoed through the control room like a whisper from another age. The sound was not mechanical, not random. It sounded like a voice. For a moment, everyone froze. Even the hum of the ship seemed to stop. The voice was faint but clear. Words spoken in a rhythm that felt familiar, yet no one understood a single word. Lyra looked at her captain. Could this be a distress call? She asked, Renard's eyes narrowed. From whom? This world has been dead for 10,000 years. They all stared at the screens, their faces glowing in the blue light. The voice repeated once more. Soft, broken but somehow emotional. Down the corridor, a human engineer named Eli Moran was fixing a power conduit. He wasn't supposed to be part of the linguistic team. Humans were still new to interstellar travel, and Eli was one of the few allowed on alien missions. He heard the sound echoing from the comm speakers and stopped moving. His tools clattered to the floor as he listened closely. The voice spoke again, and Eli's heart skipped a beat. He whispered under his breath, "That can't be." He ran toward the control room, his boots echoing through the metallic halls. When he reached the door, he saw everyone standing still, staring at the sound analyzer. "What's happening?" Eli asked out of breath. Lyra turned to him, slightly annoyed. "It's a dead language, unknown origin," Renard added. "Even our AI cannot decode it." The sound played again. This time, Eli's eyes widened. He took a step forward, as if drawn by the sound. The aliens watched as the human's expression changed from shock to disbelief. Then Eli whispered softly, "You still speak that dialect?" The room went silent. Every head turned toward him, eyes wide in confusion. Lyra blinked. "What did you just say?" Eli looked at her, his voice shaking. I understand some of it." Renard's voice was sharp now. "That's impossible, human. This tongue is unknown even to the archives." But Eli didn't answer. He was listening again to the rhythm, the tone, the hidden sadness in the voice. "It's old," he murmured, "very old. My grandmother used to sing something like this when I was a kid." Lyra's eyes widened. "Your grandmother?" Yes," Eli said quietly. "She told me it was from a story. From people who lived before the first human colony ships." Renard frowned. Humans didn't exist during the age this planet died. Eli didn't respond. He was lost in thought, hearing the voice again, slow. Almost like a lullaby, he began to hum softly, following the same melody. The symbols on the screen shifted as if reacting to his tone. Lyra gasped. "It's responding to him." Eli stopped. Startled. "What do you mean responding?" Lyra pointed at the monitor. "The frequency just changed. It's syncing with your voice." Renard stepped closer. "Play the recording again." As the sound filled the room, Eli whispered the words he remembered. To everyone's shock, the voice in the signal answered back. A flash of light burst from the display. The signal waveform transformed into a glowing symbol, a spiral shape like an open eye. The ship's systems flickered, alarms beeped softly. Then everything went quiet again. Renard's voice broke the silence. "What did you just do?" Eli looked down, his voice barely a whisper. I just said hello." Lyra stared at him, half in fear, half in wonder. "You mean this dead planet is listening?" Eli nodded slowly. I think someone down there is still alive. The crew stood frozen, staring at the quiet planet below. Lightning cracked across its dusty surface like veins of gold. The signal started again, but this time, it wasn't random. It sounded clearer, almost eager, as if the planet itself was speaking to them. Captain Renard looked at his crew, then at the human who somehow awakened a dead world. "Prepare a landing party," he ordered, his voice heavy with awe. "Let's find out who's talking." The engines of the Luma roared softly as it turned toward the planet. Far below, something ancient stirred, waiting for the first visitor in thousands of years. And above it all, the echo of a forgotten language whispered again, a language that should have been impossible. Until a human said, "You still speak that dialect?" "Eh." The planet below was silent, covered in endless sand and broken stone. But deep under its dusty surface, something was alive. Something that had waited far too long. The research ship. The Luma descended through thick clouds of static and red lightning. Its engines hummed softly as it broke through the storm, glowing like a small sun in the dark sky. Inside, the crew watched from the main window as the dead planet came into view. Mountains of glass and ruins stretched across the horizon. The land looked burned, like it had once been alive and then suddenly frozen in time. Captain Renard stood tall at the front, his eyes fixed on the surface below. "This world doesn't look dead to me," he said quietly. The others stayed silent, listening to the soft hum of the signal still playing through the speakers. Eli Moran, the human engineer, stood behind them. His heart was beating fast. He still couldn't believe what had happened, how he had understood the voice, how his own words had made the signal change. Lyra, the linguist, turned toward him, her eyes full of questions. "You really think your grandmother's stories came from here?" she asked. Eli nodded slowly. "I don't know how, but yes, it feels the same, the rhythm, the tone, everything." As the Luma approached the planet's surface, the voice from the signal grew stronger. It no longer sounded like a random message. Now it was forming words, and slow, heavy, full of emotion. The AI translated the sound waves into visuals on the screen. A pattern of glowing shapes, Lyra gasped. "Those symbols." "They match the old Terran colony markings," Renard frowned. "But those colonies were lost thousands of years ago." Eli stepped forward. "Then maybe we just found one." The ship landed near what looked like a giant crater. At the center of it stood a huge metal structure half buried in sand. It was shaped like a tower, tilted and broken, but still humming with weak energy. Lightning danced above it like glowing veins across the sky. Eli stared out the window, whispering, "That shape. I've seen it before." Lyra turned to him, surprised. "Where?" "In my grandmother's pendant," he said softly. "She used to wear a small charm that looked exactly like that." Captain Renard ordered the landing team to gear up. The air outside was heavy, filled with static and dust as they stepped out. The sound of their boots echoed across the empty plain. Every breath felt strange, like the air itself was remembering something. Lyra activated her scanner, energy readings coming from below the surface, and she said. Eli's hand brushed against the sand, and for a second, he thought he heard a whisper, a voice calling his name. They moved closer to the metal structure. It was covered in symbols and curved, flowing lines that looked both alien and human. Eli reached out and touched one of the carvings. The moment his skin made contact, the ground trembled softly. Light flashed through the symbols, moving like liquid fire. Lyra jumped back. "What did you do?" Eli shook his head. "I just touched it." The symbols began to rearrange, forming new shapes. Lyra pointed at the glowing lines. "It's forming a sentence, and in your grandmother's dialect." Renard's voice was calm but filled with tension. "Read it." Eli took a deep breath and spoke the words aloud. The symbols pulsed brighter, and the metal door slowly slid open, revealing a dark passageway. The air that came out was cold, dry, ancient. They stepped inside, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. The walls were smooth, lined with more glowing patterns every few meters. They saw faded carvings, pictures of people. Some looked human, others alien. But they stood together, smiling, holding hands. Eli felt something stir in his chest. "This isn't a ruin," he said quietly. "It's a memory, deeper inside." They found a large chamber filled with strange machines and crystal pillars. Each pillar had markings of the same old language. Lyra scanned one and gasped. "Captain, these contain data, millions of years old." Renard looked around. "Record everything." As they moved forward, Eli stopped at the center of the room. He felt a pull, as if something invisible was calling to him. He knelt down and brushed off a layer of dust, revealing a round plate embedded in the floor. The plate began to glow with the same symbol as before, the spiral eye. Suddenly, the signal from their ship came alive again, echoing through the chamber. The entire floor lit up, and a projection appeared, a tall, glowing figure made of light and static. Its face was blurry, but its voice was soft and familiar. "Human," the figure said in the old dialect. Eli's breath caught in his throat. "You still speak this tongue?" the figure continued. The others couldn't understand a word, but Eli did. Every single one. He stepped closer and whispered back, "Who are you?" The figure tilted its head. "We are the first ones, the forgotten colony. We spoke before your kind learned to walk among the stars." Lyra looked at Eli nervously. "What is it saying?" Eli turned toward her slowly. "It's saying they're human." Or something close. Renar's eyes widened. "That's impossible." Eli looked back at the figure. "What happened to you?" The glowing being's voice was full of sorrow. "They erased our memory, they buried our words. They said no one must speak our tongue again." The light flickered, and the figure began to fade. Eli shouted, "Wait, who erased you? Who did this?" But the answer was lost in static. The chamber fell silent again, the light fading into darkness. Only the faint echo of the signal remained, pulsing softly like a heartbeat beneath their feet. Eli stood still, his face pale. He looked at his captain and said quietly, "This isn't just a dead planet." Renar frowned. "Then what is it?" Eli's voice trembled as he replied, "It's a grave, and someone buried the truth here." The camera of the Luma's probe hovered outside, capturing the storm above the ruins. Thunder rolled across the sky as if the planet itself remembered the voices that once lived there. And far underground, something ancient began to awaken. The dead colony was no longer silent. It had been found, and it was ready to speak again. The air underground was heavy. Every breath felt like breathing through time itself. The team from the Luma moved slowly down the dark passage. Their flashlights carved narrow paths of light through ancient dust. Captain Renar led from the front, his tall figure casting long shadows on the walls. Behind him walked Lyra, scanning the strange symbols that pulsed faintly as they passed, and following them was Eli Moran, the human who had somehow awakened this world. The deeper they went, the more the silence grew alive. It wasn't empty anymore, it hummed, faintly, like a memory trying to speak. The sound of the signal still echoed in Eli's earpiece, matching the rhythm of his heartbeat. He whispered to himself, "It's not just a message, it's leading us somewhere." Lyra turned her head, her eyes catching his. "You think it's guiding us?" Eli nodded. "Yes, it feels like it wants us to find something." They reached a wide metal gate half buried in the rock. Symbols ran across its surface, glowing like veins of fire. Lyra brushed the dust away, reading the shapes. Her voice trembled. "These symbols mean city, and here this one means below." Renar stepped closer. "You mean there's a city under this place?" Eli stared at the gate and whispered, "The city beneath dust." He touched one of the symbols. The ground rumbled, a deep, slow sound like the planet was waking up. A thin crack of light spread across the door, widening until the whole wall began to slide open. Behind it was a massive chamber filled with faint blue light. They stepped inside and gasped. Spread out before them was an entire city, silent, ancient and buried in stone. Towers of glass-like material stretched upward, half broken and covered in sand. Floating platforms hung frozen in midair, as if time had simply stopped. And in the middle of it all, a tall spire pulsed with a soft light. The same light as Eli's pendant. Lyra whispered, This is impossible." Renar's voice was deep, filled with awe. "A whole civilization down here." Eli walked forward slowly. Every step felt familiar, like walking through a dream he'd had long ago. As they explored, strange things began to happen. The lights in the towers flickered as they passed. Doors opened and closed by themselves, and faint whispers drifted through the air, voices speaking in the old dialect. Lyra recorded the sound, her scanner flashing. "It's the same language," she said, "but they're not words of warning. They sound like greetings." Eli stopped near a small platform with a carved circle in the center. He stepped onto it, and the platform glowed under his boots. A holographic image appeared, scenes of humans and aliens working side by side. They were building something together. Lyra gasped. It's showing history. Look, that's a human. Eli nodded. They were the first ones, he said softly. The first colony that tried to live together. The images changed, showing war, explosions and darkness swallowing the city. The voices turned from soft to desperate. Eli felt a chill run through him. They were wiped out, he whispered. Lyra turned to him. By who? But Eli didn't answer. His eyes fixed on a glowing corridor leading deeper below the city. He felt the same pull again. The same invisible force calling his name. Captain Renard noticed. Moran. Stay close. Eli nodded but kept walking. The corridor was narrow, the walls covered with strange crystals that shimmered faintly. He could hear faint breathing, not his own, not human. When they reached the end, they found another chamber, circular and vast. In the middle stood a ring of massive stone pillars surrounding a pool of clear liquid light. Eli stepped closer, his reflection glowing in the surface. Lyra's scanner beeped rapidly. Energy levels are off the charts, she said. Renard's voice was low. What is this place? Eli whispered. A memory core. Maybe the heart of the city. Suddenly, the liquid rippled and rose like smoke. It formed shapes, faces, bodies, silhouettes of people. They were transparent, glowing softly blue. Eli stepped back in shock. One of the figures spoke, its voice echoing all around. You have returned, it said in the ancient dialect. Eli felt his skin prickle. He could understand it again. Every word, Lyra whispered nervously. What's it saying? Eli translated softly. It says, we have returned. Renard took a cautious step forward. Ask them who they are. Eli nodded and spoke slowly in the same dialect. Who are you? The figures turned their glowing faces toward him. We are the last voices, they said, the guardians of the forgotten city. Eli swallowed hard. Why did you call us? The figure's light dimmed for a moment, then one stepped closer. Because the silence is ending, it said. Eli frowned. What silence? The answer came like a whisper through all the walls. The ones who erased our language. They have awakened again. Lyra and Renard looked at each other. Confused, Eli felt a chill crawl up his spine. The figure continued. We waited for one who could hear us. One who still carries the old words. Eli blinked. You mean, me? The glowing beings nodded. The blood remembers, they said. And through you, the language will live again. The lights in the city began to flicker wildly. The ground trembled, sending small cracks across the crystal floor. Renard shouted, we need to leave now. Eli hesitated, his eyes still locked on the figures. Wait, he said. There's more I need to understand. But the voices began to fade. The truth lies deeper, they whispered. In the Chamber of Echoes, the chamber shook violently. Rocks fell from the ceiling as the light dimmed. Renard grabbed Eli's arm, pulling him back toward the corridor as they ran. Eli looked over his shoulder one last time. The glowing figures were watching and not angry, not afraid, just waiting as if they knew he would return. When they reached the surface again, the storm above had grown worse. Lightning split the sky, and the signal on their ship was now louder than ever. Eli stood in the rain, staring at the ground below his feet. He whispered to himself, the Chamber of Echoes. That's where the truth is. Captain Renard looked at him. And what truth is that? Eli turned slowly toward him, his eyes filled with quiet fear and wonder. The truth about us, he said, and what we used to be. Thunder rolled over the desert of ruins, and far beneath them the sleeping city stirred once more. The whispers of the forgotten language filled the air again. The story of the first colony was waking up, and it had been waiting for a human to listen. The storm above had grown wild. Lightning streaked across the clouds like golden scars in the dark sky. From high above, the planet looked alive, a heartbeat of light pulsing through a dead world. But beneath the surface, in the ruins of the forgotten city, that heartbeat was calling to one man. Eli Moran stood alone near the great spire. The others were busy studying the glowing symbols and collecting samples. But Eli couldn't stop hearing the voices in his head, soft, distant, whispering in the same dead language. He had heard them in his dreams since the signal first spoke to him. Lyra walked toward him, her scanner still glowing faintly. Eli, you've been quiet, she said softly. He didn't answer at first, just kept staring at the ground where the ancient light flickered under the sand. Finally he spoke, his voice low and careful. They told me where to go, Lyra frowned. Who told you? "Ah, the voices," he said simply. "They said the Chamber of Echoes will show the truth." Captain Renar overheard from behind, his tone firm but cautious. "We're not chasing whispers, human," he said. "This planet is unstable." Eli turned toward him. "You've seen what this place does when we ignore it." Renar's eyes narrowed, his voice calm. "And you've seen what happens when we touch things we don't understand." For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Lyra stepped between them. "If the Chamber of Echoes exists," she said, "it could hold answers about the colony, maybe even about the ones who erased them." Renar studied them both before sighing. "Fine," he said. "But we go together." They followed Eli through the ancient corridors once more. The signal from their ship echoed faintly through the stone walls. Each step they took sent small ripples of light through the floor. The deeper they went, the colder the air became, and the whispers grew louder, not like voices of the dead, but like a song from something alive. After hours of walking, they reached a vast metal door carved into the mountain rock. It was covered with flowing symbols that seemed to breathe in the dim light. Eli's pendant began to glow again. Pulsing in the same rhythm as the door, Lyra raised her scanner. "It's reacting to you," she said. Renar took a step closer. "Do you know how to open it?" Eli hesitated. "I think it wants me to speak." He closed his eyes and whispered the words that had echoed in his mind since he first heard the signal. The ground trembled, the air hummed, and one by one, the symbols on the door lit up like stars. Then, with a deep sound that shook the floor, the door slowly opened. A cold wind blew from within, not air, but something older, heavier. Inside was a massive circular chamber. The walls were made of dark crystal that reflected their lights in strange, shifting patterns. As they stepped inside, their footsteps echoed like thunder. Lyra whispered, "It's like the whole room is alive." Eli looked up. The ceiling was covered in markings that moved slowly, changing shape as if they were watching. At the center stood a single stone platform surrounded by thin beams of light. Eli walked toward it, drawn by an invisible pull. Renar placed a hand on his weapon, scanning the shadows. "Stay alert," he warned. "I don't like this." Lyra was already recording, her eyes wide in wonder. "This place is beyond anything we've found before," she said. Eli reached the platform and the beams of light shifted, forming symbols in the air around him. A soft voice spoke from nowhere and everywhere at once. "You carry the forgotten tongue." Eli froze. It was the same voice from the earlier projection, but clearer, stronger. He answered softly, "Who are you?" The light pulsed and a figure began to form before him. Tall, slender, made entirely of shimmering gold light. It had no face, only a mask of symbols shifting like water. "I am the Echo," it said. The last memory of those who spoke before silence. Eli stepped closer. "The colony. It was real, wasn't it?" And the Echo nodded slowly. "They came here to build peace between species," it said. "But peace frightened those who lived on power." Lyra looked at Eli nervously. "Ask who destroyed them," Eli did, his voice trembling slightly. The Echo's light dimmed. "They called themselves the Silencers," it said. "They erased every record, every word that could connect species. They feared the unity we built," Renar muttered. "Silencers. I've seen that name in classified archives." The Echo turned toward him, its voice sharper now. "They still exist, hidden among your stars, and they have begun to wake again." The lights in the chamber flickered. Eli stepped closer. "Why me? Why can I hear you?" The Echo's voice softened. "Because your blood remembers," it said. "Your ancestors were among the first to speak the universal tongue, the language of creation, not destruction." Eli's chest tightened. "My grandmother, she knew this." The Echo nodded. Her words kept the spark alive, waiting for this moment. Suddenly, the walls trembled violently. The beams of light broke apart, and static filled the air. Renar shouted, "Something's interfering with the structure." Lyra checked her scanner. "No, it's not the structure. It's coming from above." A new signal. The Echo turned to Eli, its voice rising. "They have found us," it warned. "You must leave this place, human, or they will silence you too." Eli shook his head. "No, not until I understand everything." But the Echo's form began to break apart. Its last words echoed through the chamber like thunder. "Protect the language, speak it again, or all will be lost." The floor cracked open, releasing a surge of white light. Renar grabbed Eli by the arm, pulling him back. "Move!" he shouted. They ran as the chamber collapsed behind them. Dust and light filled the tunnels as ancient walls fell apart. They barely made it to the surface before the entrance caved in. The storm had grown even stronger, now glowing red and gold. Their ship, the Luma, hovered nearby, waiting for extraction as they climbed aboard. Eli looked back at the ruins through the thunder and fire. He could still hear the faint echo of the voice. "You are not the last," it whispered. "The language still lives." Eli stared into the storm. His heart racing, he didn't know what the silencers were, or why they feared the language. But he knew one thing, this was only the beginning. And somewhere in the darkness of space, the silencers were already listening. The sky above the dead planet burned with strange colors. Lightning cut through the clouds like golden veins. The storm never stopped now, as if the planet itself had awakened. Inside the Luma, the crew was silent, no one spoke. Not after what they had seen inside the Chamber of Echoes. Ely Moran sat in the observation bay, his hands shaking slightly. He stared out at the ruins below, the lost city glowing faintly beneath the sand. The words of the echo still echoed in his mind. "Protect the language, speak it again, or all will be lost." He couldn't forget the way it had called him human, like it had known him personally. Lyra entered the room quietly, carrying a small datapad filled with recordings from the chamber. She placed it on the table beside him. "I've been analyzing the fragments," she said. "The symbols you activated weren't just text. They were a map." Eli looked at her, confused. "A map to what?" "To memory," she replied softly. "It leads to something hidden under the spire, something older than the city itself." Before Eli could respond, Captain Renard walked in, his armor still dusted with ash from the storm. His voice was low and tense. "The scans from orbit show movement under the surface," he said. "Structures shifting, energy rising." Lyra frowned. "That's impossible. The whole city should be dead." Renard's tail twitched slowly. "Not anymore." Eli stood up, his eyes still fixed on the window. "They said the silencers are waking," he whispered. Renard turned sharply. "If that's true, we need to leave this system. Now." But Eli shook his head. "We can't, not yet. There's something down there. Something they wanted us to find." Lyra nodded in agreement. "The map shows one last location in the core of the city." Renard's eyes narrowed. "You mean we go back down there?" Eli met his gaze. "Yes, one last time." After a long silence, Renard sighed. "Fine, but this time we go prepared hours later." The Luma descended once again through the storm. The ship's lights cut through the thick dust as it landed near the ancient spire. The air outside crackled with energy. The ruins seemed to glow like embers, alive once more. The three of them stepped out together. Eli's pendant pulsed softly against his chest. Every step he took seemed to awaken the ground beneath him. They followed the map's signal to the base of the spire. A hidden passage had appeared there, one that hadn't been visible before. The tunnel led them deep underground. The walls shimmered with patterns of light that moved like living code. Lyra whispered, "These are language threads." Eli glanced at her. "Language threads?" She nodded. "The foundation of their communication system. The dialect itself woven into the architecture." The path opened into a vast underground hall. At its center stood a crystal sphere floating above a pedestal. Inside the sphere were moving lights, millions of them. Spinning in patterns like stars, Eli walked toward it, unable to look away. Lyra's scanner beeped rapidly. "It's alive," she said. "Some kind of organic memory system." Eli reached out, his hand trembling. The moment his skin touched the sphere, a surge of light filled the room. Images flashed before his eyes, not just sights, but memories. He saw humans standing beside aliens, working together, building cities, laughing, learning. He saw a council, beings of different species speaking one shared language. Then darkness, fire, and war. He saw ships burning in orbit and heard a voice shouting, "Erase the tongue, erase the unity." Eli stumbled back, gasping for air. Renard caught him. "What did you see?" Eli's eyes were wide, glowing faintly from the light. "The truth," he whispered. "The language wasn't just words. It was power." Lyra frowned. "Power?" Eli nodded slowly. "The dialect connected minds. It allowed them to feel each other's thoughts. No lies, no secrets." Renard's voice was low, and the silencers destroyed it because they couldn't control it. Eli looked at him. "They feared peace," the sphere pulsed brighter, and suddenly the voice of the echo returned. "You have seen the truth," it said. The language binds life, it was made to unite. Not rule, Eli stepped closer. Then why was it buried? Because fear speaks louder than harmony, the voice replied. Lyra's voice trembled. Can it be restored? Yes, said the echo. But it must be spoken by one who carries both sides, human and alien. Blood and code. Renar looked at Eli. Realization dawning on his face. It's you, he said quietly. You're the link. Eli's voice shook. I'm just an engineer, but the echo answered. You are more. Your line remembers what others forgot. The lights inside the sphere began to swirl faster, forming a pattern that resembled a heartbeat. The air vibrated with soft humming. The silencers rise, the echo warned. They have heard the awakening. They come to silence it again. Suddenly, the ground shook violently. Renar looked at his wrist display. Multiple signatures approaching, Otta from orbit? Lyra's face went pale. Ships, she said. Hundreds of them. The echo's light dimmed as it whispered its final words. The tongue that connects all hearts must live again. Speak it, human, or all light will fade. The sphere cracked, releasing a burst of glowing particles that filled the hall like 1,000 fireflies. Eli raised his hand, watching as the light danced around him. He could hear the old language in his head again, soft, rhythmic like music written in stars. He spoke the words aloud, and the entire chamber responded. Walls lit up, symbols glowed, and the city itself began to awaken. Renar shouted over the noise. Eli, what are you doing? Eli's voice echoed like thunder. I'm remembering. The ground split open, revealing a network of glowing roots beneath the city, all pulsing in time with Eli's words. Lyra covered her eyes from the light. Renar pulled her back as the energy surged upward through the tunnels. From orbit, the Luma's sensors captured a massive wave of light spreading across the planet. It wasn't a weapon. It was a signal. A single word repeated in thousands of voices. A word from a dead dialect, now alive again. Eli fell to his knees. Exhausted but smiling, he whispered softly. They can hear us now. Lyra knelt beside him. Who can? Eli looked up at the glowing sky. Everyone, he said. Every world that forgot who we were, far above. The silencer ships turned toward the light, and deep inside their cold engines, something ancient stirred, a fear that had been buried for ages, because the dead language had spoken again, and it had spoken through a human. Space burned with light. From orbit, the planet below looked alive again. Glowing veins of gold spread across its surface like fire under skin. The lost city had awakened, and far above it, in the cold silence between stars, they had heard the silencer fleet. Dark ships shaped like blades moved through the void with quiet precision. No light escaped their hulls. No signal announced their arrival. They were built to erase, not to conquer, not to rule, only to silence. On the Luma, alarms screamed across every deck. Captain Renar stood in the command bay, staring at the radar screen filled with red dots. Lyra's voice trembled as she read the data. Over 100 ships, sir. Old war models. Pre-Union design. Renar's tail flicked, his eyes narrowing. They're real. Eli entered the bridge, his clothes still glowing faintly with energy from the chamber below. He didn't need to ask what was happening, he could feel them coming. The same cold presence that haunted his dreams was now awake. The silencers, he whispered. Renar turned toward him sharply. You know what they want? Eli nodded slowly. To erase what I just spoke. The ship shook as a beam of dark energy shot past them. Barely missing the hull, Renar barked. Shields up. All power to evasive systems, Lyra ran to her console. They're targeting the spire, not us. Eli's eyes widened. They want to destroy the memory core. Below them, the ground cracked open again. The glowing spire pulsed brighter, sending massive waves of light into the sky. It was like the planet was defending itself. Eli pressed his hand against the window, whispering the ancient words again. The light from the spire answered, forming a protective field that shimmered across the surface. Renar glanced at him, half in awe, half in disbelief. You're controlling it, he said. Eli shook his head. No. It's listening. Another explosion shook the ship. The silencers had deployed drones, small, needle-shaped machines that swarmed like black clouds. They moved fast, cutting through the storm toward the surface. Lyra's voice broke the silence. They're digging into the ruins. Eli turned to Renar, his voice steady now. We have to go down there, Renar growled. That's suicide, Eli met his gaze. It's the only way to stop them. Moments later, a landing pod dropped from the Luma, cutting through fire and lightning. Inside were Eli, Renar, and Lyra. The pod crashed near the base of the spire, sliding across the glowing sand outside. The drones were already there, tearing through the ground with beams of dark light. Eli stepped out, his pendant burning bright against his chest. The drones turned toward him instantly. Sensing the energy, Lyra shouted, "Eli, they're locking onto you." He raised his hand, shouting the words he remembered. The old dialect. The ground beneath him pulsed, and a wave of golden light shot outward. The first wave of drones froze in midair, their lights flickering, then they fell and silent. Lifeless, Renar blinked, stunned. "What did you just do?" Eli breathed heavily. "I spoke the counter-command." Lyra's eyes widened. "You commanded them?" "No," Eli said softly. "I reminded them who they were built by." They moved quickly toward the spire. Inside, the crystal sphere had shattered, but the chamber still glowed with faint light. Eli touched one of the remaining panels and it lit up again. A holographic figure appeared. The echo, its voice weaker now. "You have awakened what was hidden," it said. "But the silencers are not alone." Renar frowned. "What do you mean?" "But their masters have risen," the echo replied. "The architects of silence. They fear the language's return." Eli clenched his fists. "Then we make them hear it again." Outside, thunder roared as the first silencer ship entered the atmosphere. It was enormous, miles long, black as night, shaped like a spear. It moved slowly but with purpose. Every frequency around it went silent. Even the planet's signal began to fade, Lyra whispered. "It's shutting down our systems." Eli could feel the silence pressing against his skin. Heavy and cold, he closed his eyes, trying to remember the old rhythm. Not just words, but sound, emotion, harmony. The language wasn't spoken with the tongue. It was spoken with the heart. He began to hum softly, the same tune his grandmother had taught him. The sound echoed through the chamber, soft at first, then louder. The symbols on the walls began to glow again. Renar stepped back in awe. "The whole city's responding to your voice," he said. Eli opened his eyes. They were glowing gold now. "I'm not speaking alone," he said quietly. "They're speaking through me." The ground trembled. Above, the massive silencer ship opened its front hull. Charging a dark energy beam aimed at the spire, Lyra screamed, "It's going to fire!" Eli raised his hands and spoke one word. Just one. A sound that no translation system could capture. The beam fired. But before it could hit, the air around the spire folded like glass. The attack shattered, breaking into streams of light that scattered into the clouds. Renar shouted, "Eli, whatever you're doing, keep doing it!" Eli's body glowed brighter, his voice steady now. He spoke the language of creation again, and the planet responded all around them. The ruins came alive, towers lifting, ground shifting, energy flooding the air. The city itself began to rise from the sand. Rebuilding piece by piece, the silencer drones short-circuited, their systems unable to process the vibration of the living tongue. The giant ship trembled, its hull cracking under invisible pressure inside the storm. It screamed in a metallic roar of resistance, and then exploded into light. The echo's voice returned, faint but calm. "You have spoken life again," it said. "But the silence is never gone. It only waits." Eli looked at the sky, breathing hard. "So do we," he replied softly. "We'll be waiting too." As the light faded, the city stood tall once more, glowing like a sun beneath the clouds. The silencer fleet was gone, scattered into dust and shadow. Lyra looked around, amazed. "You saved it." Eli shook his head. "No, I just reminded it to breathe." Renar turned toward the horizon where the storm finally began to clear. The first sunlight in thousands of years touched the city's towers, and in the wind they could still hear faint whispers. Voices speaking the old dialect, not dead, not lost, alive again, carried by the breath of the world. Eli smiled, his voice a soft whisper. "The language lives," he said, and for the first time the planet answered back. With a single word spoken by 1,000 unseen voices, "Welcome home." The storm had finally ended. For the first time in thousands of years, sunlight touched the dead planet. Golden rays poured through the fading clouds, glimmering over glass towers and ancient stone. The once forgotten city now shone like a living jewel beneath the stars. From above, the Luma hovered silently, its scanners recording what no one had thought possible. A world reborn. The reading showed energy levels that matched no known civilization. It was as if the planet itself had come back to life. At the center of it all stood the Great Spire, glowing like the heart of a star. Inside the ship, Captain Renard watched the data stream in disbelief. He had seen many worlds, wars, and miracles, but nothing like this. This planet shouldn't exist anymore, he said quietly. Lyra stood beside him, still staring at the glowing surface. It's like it's singing, she whispered. Look, what even the wind moves in rhythm, and somewhere down there, in the middle of that rhythm stood Eli Moran, the human who spoke the dead language. His clothes were torn, his hands covered in dust and light. But his eyes, they still glowed faintly gold. He stood before the spire, surrounded by soft energy flowing like water. The air around him shimmered with whispers, countless voices speaking together in harmony. Lyra and Renard landed nearby. They approached carefully, their boots crunching over glass and sand. Eli, Lyra called softly, are you all right? He turned slowly toward them and smiled. I think, he said quietly. They're still here. Lyra frowned. Who's still here? Eli looked up at the light above them. The colony, he said. The echoes, the ones who built this place. He placed his hand on the surface of the spire. They're not gone. They've just changed. As he spoke, the ground beneath them glowed brighter. The same symbols from the Chamber of Echoes appeared again. Spiraling outward in waves, Renard stepped back. It's reacting to you, Eli nodded. No, it's reacting to all of us. The symbols formed a circle around them. Then a projection rose from the center. The echo, clearer and brighter than before. Its golden light shimmered softly, almost warm. You have done what no one else could, it said. You spoke the language not as a weapon, but as truth. Eli stepped forward, his voice gentle. I didn't just speak it, I felt it. The echo nodded. That is why it answered you. Lyra tilted her head, amazed. Is it alive? And the echo turned to her. The language is more than sound, it said. It is connection, a bridge of heart and memory. It binds all who listen. Renard looked at Eli. So what happens now? And the echo's light dimmed slightly. The silencers will not return soon, it said. But silence itself always tries to grow again. Eli's voice was steady. Then we'll keep speaking. The ground began to hum again. From the spire, beams of light shot upward into the sky, splitting into countless strands that spread across the stars. Each beam carried a pulse, a sound, and a word. The old dialect was being sent across the galaxy, a message to every world that had forgotten it. Renard shielded his eyes. What's it saying? Eli smiled faintly. It's saying we remember, back on the Luma. Systems began to flicker with incoming transmissions. Not data, not signals, but voices. Different species, different worlds, all receiving the same sound. Somewhere on distant planets, people looked to the sky, hearing words they didn't understand. Yet somehow they felt the meaning. Peace, memory, unity. Inside the spire, the echo's light pulsed brighter. The language is no longer dead, it said. It will live in every mind that listens, every heart that remembers. Eli looked down, emotion heavy in his chest. My grandmother used to say that words are alive if someone believes them, he whispered. The echo's golden form tilted its head gently. She remembered the spark, it said. You gave it flame. A gentle breeze swept through the ruins. Carrying voices like a song, the city's towers lit one by one, each sending light into the sky. It was as if the entire planet was singing. Renard looked around, awe in his eyes. Is this them? Eli nodded. Every one of them. Lyra's voice trembled. They're free now. Eli smiled softly. No, they were never trapped. They were just waiting for someone to listen. The echo began to fade slowly, its light drifting into the air like dust made of stars. Before disappearing completely, it spoke one last time. The voice of unity lives through you, human. Do not let silence win again. Eli stood in silence as the light vanished. Then he turned to Renard and Lyra. What happens now? And he asked quietly. Renard looked toward the sky where the last storm clouds were breaking apart. We go home, he said, and tell them what we saw. Lyra smiled faintly. Do you think they'll believe us? Eli chuckled softly. Maybe not, but they'll feel it when they hear the wind. As they boarded the Luma, the engines roared softly to life. The ship rose into the sky, leaving behind the glowing world below. But even as they left the planet's surface, they could still hear the faint hum of the old dialect carried through space. It wasn't loud, just gentle, steady, alive. Eli sat by the window, watching the light fade behind them. He whispered the words he had learned, the first words he ever spoke in the dead language. "Hello," he said softly. "I hear you." And across the stars a quiet voice answered, "We hear you too." The message spread through the galaxy like ripples through water, reaching old colonies, forgotten stations, and distant worlds that had once spoken as one. Everywhere it went, it awakened a memory of peace, of unity, of shared creation. Back on the bridge, Lyra looked at Eli. "You know," she said, "this isn't the end." Eli smiled, eyes still on the stars. "No," he replied. "It's the beginning." Renard turned to his crew, his voice calm but proud. "Log this as the final entry," he said. "The dead language has spoken again," and humanity answered. The Luma drifted quietly into the endless dark, and behind them, the reborn world pulsed like a golden heart in the void. Alive, eternal, whispering through the silence. The language lives,